not morning, afternoon, should I say? We're 12 o'clock now, aren't we? Morning. Oh, just done it again. Afternoon, everybody. You can tell it's the first week back after Christmas break. I don't know what time it is. I think it's 12 o'clock. I think it's time to start. We'll maybe just wait a couple of minutes just to see if anyone else is going to join. I think this one will be a smaller one today, but we'll give people a minute or so just to see if anybody else is going to join us. Yeah. Okay, so hi everyone. Welcome back to the first group of 2022. This is a bit of a shorter session that will last for around an hour, and we're hoping to use this session just to share some updates with you and get your thoughts on some things that we've been working on.
Yeah, so as Evie said, this is a shorter group and it is in addition to the usual 6 weekly meetings that we have. But 2 weeks from today, we will go back to that 6 weekly thing. So that will be on Wednesday, the 19th of January, and that will be our first proper PDSG of the year. We'll give you some more information about that at the end, but just so you know the plan from the start.
Yeah. Okay. Okay, so as usual, oh, where are we? Yep, there we go. As usual, this session is being recorded and will be uploaded to our website in the next few days so that you can rewatch, or people who weren't able to join us today can catch up. If you'd like to use your microphone to share anything or ask a question, if you can use the raise hand function. So at the bottom of the screen, there's the control panel. And if you click on reactions, then you can click raise hand, and that will just bump you up to the top, and then we can see you and unmute you so you can share your idea.
Yeah, please do feel free to comment in the chat box, either to have conversations amongst yourselves or to ask us some questions, and we'll keep an eye on that throughout. We do welcome all comments, and it's great to see the discussions in the chat boxes, but please do bear in mind that this is not the setting for individual advice in terms of reasonable adjustments. If you do have any questions though, then you can contact us via email, and we'll go from there, and anything specific that you'd like to ask.
Okay, so what's that? So for today's session then, we'll be talking through the information that is sent to clients before and after their assessment and how this has recently been updated. There have been quite a few changes, so we'll just sort of let you know what we've been working on really. We'll then go through the reasonable adjustments document for adults. Again, this is a new document, and we hope to get your input on this as well as on some other resources that we've introduced. And at the end, we'll give details on how to receive a copy of the documents. For some of you, these won't have been in place when you had your assessment. So if there's anything that you would like a copy of, let us know and we can send that to you, and we'll let you know how to do that at the end.
Okay, so for many of you, this information that is on the screen here, you will have had before your assessment, and this has since been updated, as Evie said, and we'll share this in a moment, but we wanted to just firstly review what you would have or should have received. So previously, in response to your initial inquiry for a self-funded assessment, they would be sent an appointment form along with a model of diagnosis document, and this has since been renamed the model of assessment to make clear that, you know, not all assessments will result in a diagnosis. For clients who were referred by their GP, they wouldn't have received an appointment form because we would have got that information from the referral. Once an appointment was arranged, the appointment pack would be sent, which would include the appointment letter, directions to Red Hill House, and the developmental history questionnaire. So you can see here the documents that were previously sent out following an assessment, assuming that a diagnosis was given. So we've got the report and letters, transition curve, Venn diagram. That was when there was more than one diagnosis given, or a diagnosis given with a coexisting diagnosis elsewhere. We've got the reasonable adjustments for children, quality indicator questionnaire about your experience with Axia, and then we've got some flyers based on the locations that you've come from.
Okay, so as mentioned previously, there's a few new documents that we've been working on, one of which is the information pack. So some of you might know about our staff away day that happened back in October, and as part of that we launched a new resource for staff called the induction pack. Just sort of covers everything really, everything that somebody would need to know working at Axia, so they can hit the ground running really. But looking at that, we thought that a similar document for clients would be really useful. There's a lot of the same information that people need to know, So we removed the part specific to staff. For example, there's things about staff training and things in there that clients obviously don't need. So we've taken that stuff out and created what we call the information pack. So this is made up of the sections that you can see on the screen here. So a brief introduction, post-diagnostic support and what we can give. That's things like this group, anime amigos and that sort of thing. The Venn diagram is in there as well as the model of assessment and transition curve that Chloe mentioned earlier. So because each section will be more or less relevant to a person depending on what stage of the assessment process they're at, this document is sent out at 3 different stages. So firstly, as part of a response to an initial inquiry, this is more for self-funded. If somebody's coming to us for a self-funded assessment, so they send their initial inquiry, we would then send them their appointment pack and appointment form, and along with that would be this information pack. So they've got all the information there. The introduction to Axia section and the information about the diagnoses will be useful for people who are looking to find out more about the service and whether they want to go ahead with the assessment. So that's, as I mentioned there, for an initial inquiry. The model of assessment part of the document will be useful for people who have had their appointment pack and they're now in the stage of preparing for their appointment. So that details what will happen, what the clinician will be asking and why. So that's useful for that stage. And then there's other sections that will benefit people who have had their assessment and who are looking for some further information. So things like the Venn diagram, post-diagnostic support, transition curve is really useful. There might be things that the clinician has mentioned during the assessment or during the report that person can then go back to the information pack to have a look through there, and it's likely that it will be in there. And this is made up of video and text as well. Yeah.
Okay, so another outcome of the away day was a focus on the resources that we give following an assessment, and we did a sort of audit on how useful these documents actually are. We found that some of the documents we were sending out might be a bit out of date and weren't as helpful as they could have been, and there was some gaps in the information we were giving and the certain types of people we were giving it to. So obviously, like, whether you get a diagnosis or not, and depending on the type of diagnosis that you do get, you're inevitably going to have some questions afterwards. So we wanted to ensure that everyone kind of leaves Axia with, something in their hands, something tangible, and with relevant and helpful resources as well. So as Evie said, we now send the information pack as part of the pre-assessment. Is that there? Yeah, so this is also sent as part of the post-assessment pack and includes the transition curve and Venn diagram we were just talking about. So as well as this, we also have a new leaflet, which I've got here. So this includes all information about the library. We've got some useful websites, our social medias at the bottom, Anime Amigos, Post-Diagnostic Support Group. And then on the flip side, we've got some information about where to go for urgent mental health in times of a crisis, and there's some QR codes that will take you directly to our website. And this is available in English and Welsh because we do get a lot of people coming from North Wales. So as well as this, we also have a new book published. Some of you probably already know the books we've previously had. And this is called Penguins and Pigeons, and this was written by one of our occupational therapists, Jackie. So you've got a copy of this here, and it's just quite a nice, friendly, easy to read. Can't see the camera. There we are. And this will be given to children that come to see us. So you may also have seen a recent news post on the website about our new premises, which is really exciting. One of the new things that we'll be setting up once we're there is more of a functioning library, so that kind of following an assessment, people can come down, have a look at the library, the different sections, and choose which ones they want to take. We'll also have a number of leaflets as well, which are just you take what you want, and there we are. And another new addition, all these new things, is our new alert cards. So we'll give some details on this shortly, but hopefully this is something that people will find useful. And back to the topic at hand, we've got the reasonable adjustments document for adults, and this covers further and higher education and employment. And this is designed as a guide for the kind of things that you can ask for and how to go about this. So,
okay, so looking at the reasonable adjustments document then, why have we made this? So in short, people don't grow out of their neurodiversity, and these neurodiverse children who will have received the schools document will grow into neurodiverse adults who previously didn't have a reasonable adjustments document from us. So for this sort of audit following the away day of what was missing, this is something that we felt was important to be sharing with people. There wasn't an up-to-date reasonable adjustments that we were sending to people. So as mentioned earlier, this can be a really sensitive topic, and it's great. There's been some people in response to the news post on the website about the session sharing their experiences, and it's great if you're happy to do that, to have some conversation, but this isn't the place for specific one-to-one advice on that. As Chloe said earlier, if there's any specific questions about experiences that you've had or are having, you can contact us by email and we'll do our best to signpost you to the correct service. So yeah, moving back onto the document then. So this covers what a reasonable adjustment actually is, what you can ask for, how to ask for this, and guidance for further and higher education and employment. As Chloe said, there's things in there like for interviews or the application process itself, and adjustments that you can ask for that. So maybe having somebody with you, having questions in advance so you can prepare, or not, in some cases, being able to avoid that sort of formal interview altogether and maybe do more of a trial rather than sort of sitting in front of a panel. You just do a trial and you show people that you can do the work by doing it. So yes, so while the children's document that we have is more of a tick box, so that's designed to be completed with, ideally with parents and school, whether that's a teacher or members of staff who work with the children, and that's a tick box document. So they'll go through, read sort of the adjustments, the suggested adjustments, and agree by ticking the boxes, literally ticking the boxes of what has been agreed on. This one is slightly different because in general, schools are sort of similar. Workplaces, it could be anything. So it's hard to do a sort of tick box for a workplace with that. So this document is more of a guide. It's got examples of things you can ask for, how to do it, but it's not so much of a sort of contract, loosely termed contract, as the children's one is. So with the adjustments for education, adult education or workplace, they should be recorded in the appropriate way for that setting. So whether that's HR or student support or whoever it is that would formalise that for you, that's the road to go down for that. So at the end of the document, there's a useful list of resources, for example, guidance from the NAS, disabled students allowance and government guidance on reasonable adjustments as well. So hopefully there'll be useful things for people who are receiving this. And as we mentioned, if it's something that you didn't receive, please let us know when we get to the end if this is something that you'd like, and we can send that over to you.
Okay, so alert cards. Previously we did have an autism alert card, but we didn't have any for anything like dyspraxia, ADHD. Some of you may have had an alert card, some of you may have seen them before. But as I said before, when we were looking at the resources given, we were analysing different things and how beneficial they were, and kind of only having one for autism didn't really make sense because we don't just diagnose autism. So this was the a previous autism alert card. As you can see, it's quite dark. Oops, it's quite dark in colour, and then there's quite a lot of text on the back there. So it can be quite overwhelming and difficult to read. So we kind of wanted to make sure that we kind of avoided that when we were making some new ones. So these are some of the new cards that we've made. There are 5 different cards in total. We've got one for autism, one for dyspraxia, and then 3 for the different types of ADHD you can have. You can have combined type, predominantly inattentive, or predominantly hyperactive. So we hope that you all kind of agree that they're a bit more easier on the eyes. They're not as overwhelming. a kind of like a light grey, white, cream colour, and then it's kind of got some examples there on things that might be relevant to you. And on the reverse side of the card, there's space for you to put an emergency contact, and then it's got our contact details, and it's also got the QR code, which can take you straight to our website, which is quite cool.
Okay, so the final improvement we're going to talk about today is the new help that we offer when completing the Developmental History Questionnaire, or DHQ. So as I'm sure you all are aware or remember, the questionnaire we send out before the assessment is quite lengthy, and it can sometimes be a bit overwhelming to make a start on that when you just sort of look at it as a blank document. So, but it is really important and informative for the clinician to have that. Covers things, you know, communication, sensory, family history, everything that the clinician will need to know and have in mind when meeting you. And there have been cases where reports and even diagnosis have been delayed because we haven't had a developmental history questionnaire. So it is a really important document. It can be hard to complete, but it is something that's really important for the clinician to have. So to sort of tackle that, we decided that offering our assistance in completing the document may help to reduce the pressure, avoid delays for people in receiving the outcome of their appointments, and just make the assessment as stress-free as possible. So now, when people are called, you know, a couple of weeks prior to their appointment, we'll get in touch with people just to confirm, make sure everything's still okay for them to attend. And at that point, we would ask them if they would like help in completing the form. If they say yes, Chloe and I will then contact them either by phone or email just to decide how is best to complete the document. Usually this is a phone call, so we'll arrange a date and time, put that in our calendars, and then we'll contact the person to complete either a section or the whole document, depending on what it is that they need help with. It might be that they're just unsure about the sensory section, for example, so it's just going through that, or for some people it's the whole document and we'll go through the whole thing with them and fill that in so that they don't need to do that on their own. And so far the people we've helped have found it really beneficial to reduce some of their anxiety prior to the assessment, and hopefully it's something that other people will find helpful as well. So now that we've sort of introduced briefly everything that we've been working on, we're going to take a quick 5-minute break, and then we'll come back, go through the reasonable adjustments document in a bit more detail, and hopefully get some feedback from you about that. So yeah, we'll take a quick break and we'll be back at, where are we? What time are we? Yeah, if we do 25 past, and we'll go through the reasonable adjustments just in a bit more detail.
Okay, so if we get back into it, as Evie just said about the reasonable adjustments, and we're aware we did kind of, that was quite information overload, it went quite quickly. So we're going to go into a bit more depth about the actual document now. So as mentioned, with the children reasonable adjustments document, some of you might have seen it if you're parents of children or whatever, but inside we've got, as Evie mentioned, more of a tick box, as you can see. So kind of like you go through that with the parents and then with school and kind of say, well, that's relevant to my child, we'll tick that, and then see what school can actually put into place. However, with the adults one, it looks pretty similar on the surface, but is more of a guide, as we've said, because, you know, all the range of different workplaces and different education systems and everything like that. So if you want to start by going through that.
Okay, so the first section of the document just outlines what is a reasonable adjustment, what it actually is. So they fall under 3 categories, or the sort of areas that you can request an adjustment, which change in practice, changing a physical feature, or providing auxiliary aids. So we'll go through these in a little bit more detail as we go through, but if you bear in mind, they're the 3 areas that you are allowed to ask for an adjustment. And obviously what is reasonable to one employer might not be to another. It depends on things like the size of the organisation, the resources that are available, but it's important to bear in mind that these are things that you can ask for. So, you know, don't be put off for whatever reason. If it's something that you need, make sure that you ask for it. Okay, so the kind of things that you can ask for then. So change in practice, this is things like flexible working hours, more frequent breaks, and it's important the government advice states allowing more frequent breaks, not to the detriment of performance reviews. So, you know, you having, if breaks are monitored in your workplace, for example, as part of your reasonable adjustment to have more breaks, that should not have an impact on, you know, your performance review. Well, you've had more breaks than allocated, but that is because you've had a reasonable adjustment. So it's important that these adjustments don't have an impact on things like performance reviews, because they're essential things that should be there. Another example of change in practice would be a clear routine and a clear work schedule. If that's something that other members of staff don't have, and it's not policy to have that, it would be an adjustment then for you to have something clear in place so that you know what you're doing and when and why.
Things like that, just to add to it, is similar to some of the stuff that we have got in the document for children. So that might have more things like movement breaks. And in schools, we would say maybe, you know, if a child feels that they need more movement breaks, to maybe, you know, hand out books at the start of a lesson or things like that. So it's all tailoring it to the environment that you're in. And a clear routine and work schedule, as Evie said, that might be like visual prompts, or seeing the timetable of what lessons they have that day and things like that. So it is kind of just like a development of the children one.
Yeah. So changing a physical feature, then this covers things like the lighting levels in the area, a personal workstation. If you're in sort of an open plan office, or, you know, there's a few desks, just having somewhere that's maybe a bit quieter, not as bright, whatever it is that you need. Or having you know, your personal desk. If it's an office where there's hot desking and people are moving around using different spaces, if it's better for you to have, you know, this is my desk and my things are here, and I don't need to pack up every day and move and sit somewhere else, and I don't know where I'm going to be sitting, then having a personal workstation for you might be one of your reasonable adjustments that you can ask for and implement. The last one is providing auxiliary aid. So this is sort of a physical assistance, I suppose. So information in alternative formats. If email isn't good, then maybe a written or a verbal communication, whichever is better for you. Visual timetables, visual resources, using headphones. It could be a variation to a uniform. If the standard uniform is not acceptable for you, then it may be that you can ask for adjustments or amendments to the regular uniform, things like that. Alternative fabrics, looser fitting, whatever it is that you need.
Yeah, so these are all just some examples. Obviously, you know what would be good for you, what would make you more comfortable in your workplace, and what would fundamentally benefit your employer, because you're able to work in a more comfortable setting and get the job done. But then obviously they can be tailored. This document is just, as we said, a guide and some examples there. So how to go about asking for these. So it needs to be clear to your employer that by having this adjustment in place, it's not going to put you at a substantial disadvantage compared to your other colleagues, and that you're still, you know, able to do the same amount of work, because that is what you're there to do, isn't it? Get the job done. But you should be able to talk to your manager and maybe arrange a meeting with them. And this is similar to what we were saying for children, you know, get the school involved, get the teacher involved. And it's kind of a collaborative way of working and making sure that your adjustments and your needs are met. But we'd recommend that you ask for the outcomes of this meeting to be written down, and that you keep a copy as well. And this will act as the confirmation of the kind of conversation and the meeting that you've had, and then what adjustments that you may have agreed on together. And you should read this document as soon as you're given a copy, and let your manager know if anything that you've discussed is missing.
Yeah. Okay, so as we mentioned earlier, there is a little bit in here as well about adjustments for job applications and interviews. So not necessarily reasonable adjustments for the workplace, but reasonable adjustments for the interview setting, whatever that might be. So if you feel comfortable in telling a potential employer of your diagnosis, it may mean that they can take that they can make adjustments to their usual recruitment process. And things like this might be requesting a clear outline of the job description, written in plain English, avoiding any jargon, just, is what it is. You might be able to receive additional information prior to interview, things like more detailed directions, photographs of the building, who you'll be meeting, procedure for arriving, what is expected. Sometimes in one, if we take an office block, for example, one sort of process for entering one might be totally different to another. And if you've not been there before, you wouldn't know that. So things like that on who to speak to, what button to press to get in, things like that. And there might be an adaptation to the style of interview. So avoiding hypothetical, what would you do if this happened sort of questions, and just asking about things that have happened and how you have done things rather than sort of imaginary situations. Things like being able to have somebody with you, somebody to support you and maybe interpret questions. And as I mentioned earlier, a possible work trial rather than a traditional verbal interview. I know we keep saying this as we go through, these are just suggestions. Not every employer will be able to put all of this in place, but it's things to keep in mind. And, if it's things that would be useful to you, it's worth having the conversation. But just as a guide.
Yeah, if you are liking the idea of a verbal interview, you'd prefer to do that, then I'm sure you could ask for to be sent the interview questions beforehand, so you can have a bit of preparation time and you're not put on the spot and feeling the pressure. So then if we go on to reasonable adjustments for further and higher education. So again, we've put some examples here, and this is probably going to be a conversation to have with your student support team, depending whether you're in college or university and things like that. And some examples of this might be, as we've mentioned, providing materials in alternative formats. For example, if feeling like reading a textbook is overwhelming, then maybe seeing things online or having a laptop in lectures rather than writing. Clear deadlines can be really beneficial, and if these can be tailored to you with more flexibility for extensions and things like that, then that would be great. Avoiding being called on. This is again what some children would hate because of the anxiety they feel and all the social exposure of them just feeling like, oh, I've got to get this question right now. That can be the same in lectures, especially when I'm sure there's quite a lot more people as well, so even more anxiety. Allowing more regular breaks, again, we've mentioned, and ensuring that the content of the lectures and lessons can be taught in a way that can be understood. So avoiding that figurative language, avoiding jargon, and just being clear and concise of what is required of you and what you need to know. And then some for exam support, as I've mentioned, like longer times in taking the exams, maybe a separate location away from that big busy exam hall, maybe someone there to support you, and to scribe it down, whether this be on a laptop or to type. So as we said, there's a number of different things, and it's just what would suit you and what would benefit you, and whether the setting and the employer or the student team can help you do that.
Yeah, so we've covered sort of how to ask for adjustments in an employment setting, but for further and higher education, the process is a little bit different. So if you receive your diagnosis prior to starting your course, you should inform your college or uni, wherever it is that you're going, so that they can ensure that appropriate adjustments are in place. And on your application form, there will be just a tick box to say that you have a disability. You can take that, put the information in there, and that will get the ball rolling to have these adjustments in place for you starting. There's also DSA, Disabled Students Allowance, that you can apply for through your student finance account. And that will involve a needs assessment taking place to finalise that as well. So if you receive a diagnosis whilst you're studying, then you should contact your college or university student support team. Sometimes these go by different names. Additional learning support coordinator, student services, it's all sort of the same thing, whatever it's called at your institution. Contact them and let them know. The exact procedure can vary from place to place, but in most cases it's a form to complete. Student support can help you do that. and they'll be able to advise on adjustments that can be made at that location. And usually that's all confirmed in an email, so you've got proof that you've had that conversation and this is what's going to happen for you going forward with your studies.
Yeah, so then on the last page of the document, as we've mentioned before, we include quite a number of useful links for you to kind of read, whether it's relevant to you or not, whether it'll benefit you or not. We've just put quite a few on there. So as mentioned previously, we've got some guidance from the NAS, the National Autistic Society. We've got some focused on dyslexia and dyspraxia. We've got ADHD guides. We've got mental health at work and guidance for an autism friendly workplace. There's just quite a few there for you to go and have a look at, and we would recommend looking at these as well.
So I just want to have a quick look in the chat box. I can see we've had a couple of comments. I think Gemma Ellie had sort of answered your query there about it covering workplaces or only covering higher education. I hope it's clear now that it does cover both. I'm sorry if my explanation was a little bit confusing earlier, but it does definitely cover employment and education for adults in further and higher education. Let's see, do we have any other? How do we get a copy of this document? So if you let us know, we'll give you the instructions on how to let us know at the end of the presentation shortly. But yeah, as we've said, if anybody wants any of the documents that we've spoken about that you might not have received, let us know. There'll be instructions on that coming up shortly. Okay, so
On to the next one.
There's a green line appeared on the screen. I'm not sure where that has come from, but we're going with it.
Okay, so following on from that comment as well, if you would like to receive any of the documents that we've mentioned, and this can be either via email or through the post, then please do let us know. You're in luck, because with the new autism alert cards and the ADHD and the dyspraxia cards that we've made, they're actually being delivered today, this afternoon. So I haven't been able to show you a hard copy, but they are on their way. So from tomorrow, if you would like any of these sending out, then we can, along with the leaflet, the adjustments, or anything else that you might have received or may have misplaced, or would just like a new updated copy, then we can do that. You can either send a direct message to us in this chat box, or send an email to inquiries, and then if you just make sure to send your name, your date of birth, and your email address to us. We'd recommend that if you don't know how to do a direct message just to us, that you email us, just so your private details aren't in this group chat.
Yeah. No, Helen, no charge. So just let us know if you want to receive one, and we'll just pop one in the post. We might need to confirm some addresses that we might have for some people might be out of date, so we'll send an email confirming that the address is still right, and then we'll just send it off. So yeah, no charge for the cards. Okay, so that's, unless there's any thing that people would like to share or any other questions that people have, that's sort of all we have today. Moving on to sort of the next Post-Diagnostic Support Group. As Chloe said earlier, that'll be 2 weeks from today, so Wednesday the 19th of January, back to the usual time of 12 till 2, and it'll be 6 weekly from there. So the next one after that is the 2nd of March. So yeah, 6 weekly again from there. And we've got Linda is going to be the speaker next time with some more updates from us. So we're looking forward to hearing those. And yeah, if there's no further questions, we're a little bit under an hour, but if there's anything that anyone wants to ask, please let us know. If not, then thanks so much for joining us for this little mini session today, and we look forward to hopefully seeing you all on the 19th.
Yeah, we hope you enjoy all of this, and we can and you can see that we are trying to benefit and make sure that everyone's got all the resources that they need. And that's especially why we're reaching out to you, because we don't want you to feel as though you've missed out on resources. And we can see that if you're keen to have some of these cards or the adjustments, we will send them out to you, because we want to make sure that everyone feels that we've not just dismissed you after your assessment, basically, and you've got all that resource that you need for whenever you need it. And then obviously there's going to be some more updates from Linda, so just bear with us with all these changes. But yeah.
So okay, so if that's it, we'll turn our camera off. We'll stay on, so if anybody wants to send a direct message with their information, we'll give you sort of 5 minutes or so to do that. Or you can send an email if that's easier, if that's what you prefer to do. But yeah, thanks so much everyone, and we'll hopefully see you next time.
Thank you.